Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Jarrell Mason, better known as Jay Mason. Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. But with me right now, I have a man. If you know the two biggest modern era boy band groups that came out of Beantown, Boston, New Edition, New Kids on the Block, this man was there from the very beginning with both groups, doing choreography for them, local groups in and around Boston, choreographer and member of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, branched off in the world of acting, entrepreneur, man of many hats. We're going to get into it with my man, Big Ace, in the building. Big Ace, thank you for coming on to Beyond the Album Cover, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out to do this interview with me. And looks like where you are, you're sitting in lovely 70 plus degree weather, may I add.
Yeah, it's actually bright out, but it's like probably in 50s.
Okay, yeah, so definitely good deal there. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So tell us about your upbringing growing up in Boston, especially in the neighborhood of Roxbury, and why Roxbury holds a very special importance within the Black community of Boston, knowing that Malcolm X stayed in Roxbury for a little while, and then also Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam was raised in Roxbury as well.
Boston growing up was a beautiful, beautiful city to grow up in. The kids had so much freedom. We could play outside. The parents were always watching us. All the neighbors were always watching us, and it was like a beautiful community. Everybody had each other's back. We come from a community where you can knock on a neighbor's door and ask them for sugar, and they give you a whole bag of sugar. And everybody worked together, and it was great. Really beautiful.
Right. So within the different neighborhoods of Boston, so pre-busing, was it a lot of mixing going over to Dorchester or Mattapan or Southie, or was everybody kind of segregated to their side of the city?
Well, in my era, there was a lot of busing going on, so it was a lot of segregation. But throughout the years, it got broken down. But it was rough growing up. Certain areas in South Boston you definitely couldn't go to without getting chased out. It was bad, but things got better. Through the course of the Funky Bunch actually coming together. Working with Mark and all of his fans coming from South Boston, all of the Funky Bunch fans coming from Roxbury and Dorchester, they had no choice but to get together. So it was a beautiful thing to see everybody coming together for music, and then seeing everybody getting along, having a good time. So we broke all the color lines by through the music and by showing that we could work together and have fun.
Right. And what was the first major hip hop act that came out of Boston that made everybody say, man, this hip hop thing is gonna take off very fast? Because we would be remiss if we didn't mention that this year is the 50th anniversary of hip hop.
Right. And that's why, it's so important for me to make a mark in hip hop in the 50th year of hip hop, because I've been performing since I was 5 years old. And now this is the 50th year, 55. And I love hip hop music. So this is my album is a love letter to hip hop. But, the most influential groups in hip hop in Boston were Edo G and the Bulldogs, RSO, the Almighty RSO crew with Benzino and Made Men. Those guys were incredible. And there were other groups like Here and Now. They were really good. They were like hip hop and R&B, but they were mostly hip hop. And there was, a lot of R&B acts that had the hip hop influence, but those were the main guys that I looked up to in hip hop.
Right. Now, what led you to want to get feet first into dancing and then make a name for yourself with the Funk Effects in the talent show circuit in and around Boston?
I was always influenced by this group that my cousin was in called the Funk Effects, and they were doing talent shows and they were doing shows at my elementary school. And so I kept auditioning. I was like 5 years old. They were laughing at me because I was too small, but I was determined to be in it. I felt like that was my destiny. I watched Jackson 5 and I was like mesmerized by Michael Jackson. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to perform on the stage. And then when I see my cousin's group, the Funk Effects, performing, it just totally blew me away. All the kids were so happy and influenced by that. And they were moved by the performance in such a great way. It inspired me to follow my dreams and my passion to be on stage. So I learned the routines, and I just fell in love with the stage and dance choreography, stage choreography, and I just kept moving from there. And I became addicted to it. You know, I was very addicted to the stage.
Right. So now, was the choreography that was within the Funk Effects pretty much your own spin of what was coming out of New York with all of the early breakdancing? You just added your own Boston flavor to it.
Yes, exactly. We were more like the Lockers, you know, like we run from Good Time. I mean, what's happening? Mm-hmm. We were like him. We performed like him, but except we had our own twist. We did a lot of acrobats. I did a lot of flips, and we kind of were mixing breakdancing into it without knowing about the breakdance. But then we started seeing the movement in New York, and it just instantly clicked with us. So we started creating our own style of breakdancing with our style of locking, and then pop locking and breakdancing just became the norm for us, you know. And we came really good. One of our traits was we always want to be original. So we would take any kind of dance that we seen and make a twist to make it our own. Yeah.
Right. And for those of you that don't know about the Lockers, look them up. He mentioned Rerun from What's Happening, the late Don Campbell, and also Toni Basil. Yes, she is a bona fide dancer, choreography, more than just Mickey. And she also co-choreographed Spread My Wings for Troop with Doc Clark.
Oh, yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Hollywood Talent Night. How did that come about, and what was it like going into the competitive Boston talent show scene, knowing that you get groups on groups on groups, and that at any given time anybody could win? Because $500 during that time was a lot of cash.
Oh yeah, and a record deal was on the line, you know. So everybody from Boston to New Hampshire, Maine, everybody was involved with the show. It was hundreds. It seemed like 1,000 competitors, you know. And my group, the Funk Effects, we actually were guest stars in the show. But I was so competitive. I was also teaching everybody, and you know, I was best friends with Bobby Brown and some other members of the New Edition, like Ralph Tresvant and Ricky Bell, and I just wanted to show them all that I was the #1 guy in Boston, because we were all talking about who's going to be #1. We're trying to be #1. And then I was like, I want to be in a competition as a solo artist to Maurice Starr. You know, he's also like an uncle to me. And he was like, yeah, you could be in the show as long as you audition. If you're going to have to be like everybody else, you get no special treatment. I was like, okay. So I auditioned. I got in there. I worked really hard. I didn't let anybody in my group see what I was doing. I wanted it to be a surprise. And I ended up turning the show out. It was crazy. And I won the show. And, you know, later on, Maurice thought it would be a great idea if me and New Edition joined forces and I'd be the 5th member. But I just, I wasn't a boy band type of guy. You know, I was more of a b-boy breakdancer. So it just wasn't sitting well with me, even though I was really good friends with them and we practiced singing all the time. Like me and Ricky Bell and Bobby, we practiced these songs, man. Oh my God, they wrote some of the best songs when they were kids, and none of them they didn't record any of them, but they were really, really good. I still remember this one song in particular called "Let's Groove," you know, and but yeah, I wanted to join the competition, and when I won, I wanted to give it to them. After I was in their group for a little bit, I was like, you know, I was home, and you know, my parents were good friends with Ronnie DeVoe's parents, and they were telling his mother, I'm not going to be in the group, and I'm going to stay with my other group. So she went behind everybody and got me. It was like, you're going to teach my boy them dance steps. You're going to teach my dance because he's going to be the 5th member. I was like, okay, I'll do that for you. So I started showing Ronnie, and then next thing you know, Ronnie auditioned, and he became the fifth member. So I think that everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. You know, I think that God wanted me to give Ronnie and New Edition that opportunity because they really deserved it. You know.
Yeah, because as most of us fans saw in the New Edition story, they did the Love You Saved by the Jackson Five, and the audience pretty much was in a frenzy for them, seeing these young kids, tight, polished, well rehearsed. And
Oh yeah.
although they didn't win, Maurice couldn't deny them because of the fan reaction.
Oh yeah. And you know, I know deep down Maurice wanted to work with New Edition from before. I beat them like a couple of times. You know, it wasn't just a Hollywood talent night. Every talent night that was in Boston, New Edition was there and my group was there, and we won every time. And you know, Michael Bivins would be somewhere in the corner, so mad, crying tears, like so mad because he knew that they were that good that they should have won. You know, and part of me felt bad because they did deserve to win, but we were just too. We were really good. We were good, and we blew people's mind because we do things that people never expected. Like we do double backflips, you know, over each other, you know, and our routines were so fast and tight and so choreographed that no other group was like us, you know. All our stuff is in sync, you know.
Right. So with the Hollywood Talent Night, was there preliminary competitions leading up to the big competition, or was it just a straight cattle call and the best of the best got to go on to the Hollywood Talent Night at the Strand?
Well, it was a couple of Hollywood talent nights, but it was just one major one. You know, there was Hollywood talent night where you won a trophy, you won a little bit of money. Then there was one that you won just trophies, and then there was the one that you won the trophy and a recording contract. And I won all of them.
Mm.
I
Now the
won all of
recording,
them.
well, man, now the recording contract that was to record with Maurice at his studio, correct?
Yes.
And what was that like going over to his studio and seeing where all the magic happened?
Well, you know, I used to always go over to the House of Hits. Like Maurice and the whole Johnson family were like my family because, you know, Maurice used to always ask the Funk Effects to open up for his band. You know, so we became like a family. We were always interacting with each other. And Maurice would invite me. I would go over there just so I could go into the music. He had a big music room with all the instruments, and I used to go in there and be mesmerized because I loved instruments. You know, when I was young, my mother gave me a clarinet. That was my first instrument when I was in first grade, and that's when I fell in love with music when I was in the first grade. And I wanted to learn all the instruments. So his brother, Calvin Johnson, God rest his soul, he taught me how to play all the instruments. You know, and then later on, his brother, Michael Johnson, he taught me how to get a little better at studio production. You know, and that's how I learned. Then Maurice took me under his wing, let me sit in the studio and watch him work. You know,
Right. And the one thing, that I liked about Maurice was that when working with New Edition and New Kids, he was willing to say, hey, even though you guys are here, I'm going to show you guys what to do so that eventually you guys can branch out and do your own thing. Because, when Candy Girl came out, everything was all Maurice. When New Kids' debut album came out, everything was all Maurice. But by the time Hanging Tough came out for New Kids, you started to see Donnie, Danny, and Jordan really started to get a little bit more hands-on in the studio and on the production side.
right? And that Maurice always wanted to educate all the artists, and that's one thing I loved about him. You know, he let us use the studios for free. He produced us for free. He never asked for a dime for the parents or anything. He did everything like out of service and love in his heart. And I just love that man so much for doing that. You know, if it wasn't for Maurice coming into Boston and showing us that love, a lot of us wouldn't have been. A lot of us got lost in the streets. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because the streets was always waiting for you. You know, that's one thing I'm so thankful for. And that's why I made a hip hop album to show my love and honor of a hip hop art form that really changed the lives of me and all the friends that I loved and helped me advance a lot of different groups that I work with, you know?
Yeah, because if you think about it, like you stated, during that time, it was still not a lot of mixing of everybody. Certain neighborhoods you couldn't go in, and you had to be in by a certain time when it got dark. But like you said, hip hop was the saving grace for a lot of folks. And you know, when going back to New Edition's story and seeing how Brooke was rehearsing them at the rec center, and it was pretty much a way for them to stay out of trouble. But at the same time, Brooke was like, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna go all in. And if you listen to what I tell you to do, you guys will be stars.
Brooke was amazing, you know, and you know Brooke had a group too. Brooke had I think they were called the Superiors, and they lost a lot to us too, you know. But I love Brooke. I love Brooke, and his work ethic was just impeccable. You know, what he did with New Edition, nobody else could have did that. You know, he was definitely God sent. You know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely that. And also knowing that that's Ronnie's uncle, and seeing, you know, when Ronnie came into the group, how it was that perfect fit. And then for the public, when we first got to hear and see them in 83 of Candy Girl, everybody locally in and around Boston already knew 5 years prior that these boys was gonna be something before the public even knew it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You could see their star quality when they performed. They just you felt some type of way when you watched New Edition when you were kids. They looked like 4 dolls. You know, it was like four of them. It was the 4 dolls, and it was just amazing to see their harmony and how tight their routines was. And I helped Brooke in a way where you know I just gave them that street edge, the dancing street edge, and um, I helped Ralph Tresvant command the stage because he was standing a little in front of the stage instead of commanding the stage. So I had to show him just a couple of little things to keep the crowd engaged and everything when we were kids, you know, because we were all just very young. But I was more experienced than everybody because I was always doing a lot of shows. I did Super Kids when I was young. I did Jerry Lewis Telethon, Backstage Disco. So I was always on TV. We were like the local celebrities. We were like hood famous, you know what I mean, in Boston.
Right.
So I just taught them what I knew. You know?
Right. And let's talk about how in 1983, a lot of people won't give New Edition credit, also credit Force MDs as well. That on Candy Girl, there's rap in the beginning and in the bridge, and how rap was still looked at as a novelty act and really wasn't going to have any stand power. But with New Edition and you all being the first generation of kids to come up under hip hop, you got to incorporate that in there. And how I'm sure a lot of R&B station program directors probably were kind of like, what is this strange talking that's at the beginning and at the bridge of this record? And then also, if you get later on to when they put out the self-titled album in 84 of Cool It Now, Mr. Telephone Man, how they had a lot of rap acts go on tour with them as a backdoor way to get hip-hop into the venues, because a lot of the venues weren't giving rap acts and promoters insurance to go into the building.
Oh yeah, it was a big struggle for us to push hip hop forward because with the hip hop came a lot of the street and the streets were kind of rough, you know. Like we were real rough back in the day, you know. It wasn't like it was, you know, it wasn't like it is now, but it was still rough, you know. Like you get beat down instead of shot up, you know. So they didn't want to see the street crowd coming in, but you know, we still were having a great time, you know. So we made a way to keep it going, you know. Sometimes we were getting hard times just to get entertainment licenses. They would have the entertainment license, but they wouldn't give it to us. They would hold it and hide it in the police department. They wouldn't give it to us, you know. But we had to force them to give it to us because they're like, yo, we're doing this for the community, and you know, there's bad people everywhere, but everybody's not bad. There's a lot of kids that are inspired by this. So we were determined to inspire the kids and entertain the people in the community, you know, and uplift the community because that's what we're doing the most.
Right, right. And what were some of the early venues in and around Boston that embraced hip hop and allowed the hip hop community to come and express themselves via, you know, dance battles or Friday night performances or whatever? What were some of the venues that said, okay, I may not understand it, but as long as it's a constructive outlet and it's keeping kids out of trouble?
Oh yeah, the Strand Theater was one of the big platforms in Uplands Corner. That's where the Hollywood Talent Night was actually at. But places like the, um, the the Joseph Lee School, that was our stomping grounds. That's where all the big talent shows went down. And like the Holland School, that's where we would rehearse at. But the Lee School was one of the major places. We also like in the early beginnings, we used to do shows at this place called the Hi Hat. The Hi Hat is actually um, down Dudley Station and right next to the Orchard Projects where where New Edition grew up at. And then it was Madison High School. Madison High School. All the high schools were throwing talent shows, but the Lee School was the main spot where we all got together.
Mm-hmm.
That was where that was the Funk Effect home, where we rehearsed that. People would come there to rehearse with us. We taught dance to New Edition and New Kids on the Block right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And let's talk about the importance of WILD and the likes of Elroy Smith, the late Sonny Joe White, and also I believe Jamie Foster Brown was very big and instrumental in helping a lot of the early Boston acts breaking like New Edition, New Kids on the Block.
Oh yeah, they were very instrumental. But Sonny Joe White, I really love with a passion because he made sure that the Funk Effects were always involved with all the major shows. Like he just fell in love with our group and he had us as the entertainment for his TV show Backstage Disco, and any concerts that they had, any big concerts in the Franklin Park, we were always involved through WILD. WILD was just amazing. I loved him. Stephen Hill was working with WILD back in the days. It was funny though because I went up to him and I said, "What's up?" And he looked at me like he didn't recognize me. I was like, "Oh man, I must have changed because I'm not a little kid anymore." But I just wanted to tell him I really appreciate everything that he did for all the kids in our community because if it wasn't for people like him, we wouldn't have had a chance to shine.
Right, definitely that. So, New Edition and Maurice split. They were signed to Streetwise originally. They left Streetwise to go to MCA. And then Maurice says, if this was big, wait till I do Osmonds, but with R&B flavor. So what was the take for you when he decided I'm gonna do New Kids on the Block, which is pretty much the pop counterpart to New Edition?
Well, I was right there in the studio when he was working, and he got the call that New Edition was moving on to different management and everything. And Maurice wasn't really happy about that because the way it went about it, it wasn't like, it was something that was kind of nice. It kind of bluntly just said, "This is it." Boom. He's like, "What the hell?" There's no warning. I guess when you just got to tell the truth hurts sometimes. Maurice didn't like that. So when he hung up, he said, "I'm going to make an all-white band that's going to be bigger than New Edition ever was." Those exact words. And he said, "Andy," they call me Andy, but I don't know why my family called me Andy. That's been my name all my life, but my name is Anthony, and Aces Anthony's Creative Entertainment. So he said, "Andy, you're going to choreograph it. You and David." I was like, and David was my manager at the time for the Funk Effects. So I was like, "Anything you need, Maurice, I got you." So we went to the Lee School, started holding auditions. Donnie was the first one that showed he was willing to learn. There was a lot of kids there that wasn't willing to learn the step. They had two left feet. Everybody was stepping to the left and I'm stepping to the right. And it was really hard to teach them. But we funneled it out to the five. And it wasn't Joey wasn't involved till later on when the other fifth member, Jamie, got pulled out the group by his mom. So I started working with them intensely every day. I had to protect them too because we're in an all-black community in Dorchester, Franklin Field projects. There's some, like I said, a real rough area. People were getting stabbed up and murdered in the fields. The basketball team were trying to jump New Edition. We had to protect them. The Funk Effects were very, very stand-up guys. We loved our people and we wasn't letting nobody hurt our people, no matter what. So we had to argue with all these guys, sometimes fight them to tell them back off, get them out of our rehearsal space, because we were all family back then, And
Mhm.
I'm so thankful that me and Donnie, you know, and Mark, we kept our relationship like that. And me and Donnie always promised each other, whoever made it first, we're gonna look out for one another. One of my boys died in the funk effects. He actually got murdered in California, my boy Randy Shropshire. So I threw a big showcase for him and invited all the groups that I work with to come and perform because we're raising money for Randy's family, you know, and everybody came. I mean, everybody came. And surprisingly, Donnie came. He was on tour with Tiffany at the time, with the New Kids. And he came and he's like, man, I just want you to do me a big favor, Ace. I was like, what? He's like, I want you to choreograph my brother's band. I'm putting together a band called Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. I want you to choreograph it. I was like, anything you want me to do, Donnie, I got your back. You know, because I knew that he was doing it as a favor because we always promised each other, whoever made it, we're going to look out for one another. You know, and he kept his word, and I kept my word, and I worked really hard to make sure that the band became one of the best bands I ever worked with. You know,
Right. Yeah, because in the beginning for New Kids, they pretty much had to scratch and claw. You mentioned the Lee School earlier. That was one of their earlier performances at the Stomping Grounds. I believe they performed at a prison at one
yeah,
point, and they were chugging cigarettes at the end of the performance, and they pretty much made their bare bones. So by the time the pop world got a hold of them, it was easy when they were selling out stadiums doing Magic Summer because they've been through the rough, and now they're in the sweet life of perform thousands and thousands of girls. And I believe Donnie had said it in the Behind the Music that the pop market came to them by accident because they were marketed as an R&B act only. Because for those of you that don't know, they did a BET version of Please Don't Go Girl, which was only marketed towards R&B markets such as BET, NY Hot Tracks, The Box, Video Music Box, or any other video shows that shows urban outlets because they were signed to the R&B division over at Columbia. I believe they were under Larkin Arnold and also Cecil Holmes. And then once pop started to catch wind, that was when Columbia pumped more money. They shot the better video, and then we all know what happened after that with pop stardom.
oh yeah, yeah, you know, and the New Edition, New Kids on the Block opened up for my band Funky Fest back in the days. We were performing at all the projects throughout Boston, all of them. Every project there was, every roughneck project, we were right in the heart of them, and we just, out of the love in our hearts, we want to entertain everybody. We do our own show, but we set up this tour, and Maurice spearheaded it. We performed in the middle of all the little towns and neighborhoods and communities in Boston, and we seen a transition happening with New Kids on the Block, how they went from this unorganized kind of group to very polished group. Like with no time at all, they became the band to see. They were like, people were coming to see them instead of us. All of a sudden, I was like, oh shoot, that's when we knew they had something special.
Right. And the crazy thing, with them and New Edition at that time was still doing their thing. Bobby, at this point, huge solo star, although King of Stage performed modestly, but Don't Be Cruel took him over the top. Best-selling album of 89 went diamond, and he was opening for New Edition on the Heartbreak Tour. And I believe MCA released both the Heartbreak album and the Don't Be Cruel album within a week for each other. So perfect synergy. But I want to get, what was your thought when New Edition decided to bring in Johnny and then went and did the Heartbreak album? And that was finally where it was the rubber that met the road, where we finally got to see and hear the mature leap that they were wanting to make prior to the Heartbreak album. But it wasn't until Johnny and Getting with Jam and Lewis that everything sort of clicked.
Yeah, I think that Johnny brought them to become more mature. He matured their sound, and the new Edition were they were a little annoyed by the pop sound. They wanted to be accepted as a mature band. And Johnny's voice gave them that mature sound. So he turned the group around, you know.
Yeah, he definitely did. And of course, Brooks' choreography, the If It Isn't Love video, very iconic. People are still trying to do it in the living room to this day. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks busted out a couple of years ago for their touchdown
Yeah.
celebration. And that's just a testament
Oh
to
yeah,
Brooks' choreography. But I
Brooke
mean,
is amazing. Brooke
yes,
is amazing.
he
I don't
plays
think he gets the
plays no
credit
game.
he deserves, man. Brooke is amazing. And whenever I hear that song, I'm breaking out in the dance steps. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just went to Australia and that song came on and I performed the whole song. People were like, "Was you in New Edition?" I was like, "I love them, you know, I do, I really do, man. They inspired me, even though I probably inspired them in the beginning, but watching their career and everything they've done, they inspired me throughout my life."
Yeah, they inspired, everybody. I mean, if you look at the modern era boy band, New Kids said it themselves in the AMA performance that they did with New Edition a couple years ago. If it wasn't for them, there'll be no them, no Backstreet Boys, no NSYNC, 98 Degrees, Boys to Men, One Direction, BTS, Troop. The list goes on and on about how all of these acts were influenced by five boys from Boston and one from DC.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they were incredible, and the sound was incredible. You know, like when New Edition kept dropping those songs, it was like a whirlwind just blew through America every time. You know, and every household, like when I would go down the street, everybody blasting New Edition out their windows, out their cars. It was just amazing, amazing times.
Right, right. So for you, when you were asked to be in Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, was it a solid sale or did it take you some convincing to hop on board?
Well, I was actually, after my friend Randy had died, I stopped working for a while, and then I got back into choreography, and I started teaching everybody dance. So I worked with a band. Maurice, best friend Larry Wu asked me to choreograph this group called Best Kept Secret, and we were really, really good. We're like the modern day Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Mhm.
But we, the other guys in the band, they weren't getting that much love. They wanted to switch the band around, just make it about me and the girl. So the group fell apart. But when I got to do the opportunity with Mark, I brought the other guys with me, Scott and Hector. So I brought them in the band because I knew that together, me, Scott and Hector, and Mark would be phenomenal together. So when the Interscope Records seen us, that's when they told me, we want you to be a part of the band. And then I was just like, I'm going to be with my boys. So yeah, of course, I was with Scott and Hector for years. And then I knew Mark for years. I performed at a school and I was teaching him and a lot of people how to break dance back then, floor lords, everybody that was breakdancing. I was a breakdance king. I never lost a breakdance competition. I was crazy about competitions. I was very competitive. And I just wanted to raise the bar all the time. And I want to be number one and I want everyone to perform at the best. So I was I was about that life. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
For
you
sure.
were very knee deep in it. Now with Mark, he was never originally in New Kids with Donnie, was he? Or was he always kind of around it when they were at the success? Because if you look at the step by step video, he has a cameo towards the end of the video.
Yeah, Mark was always around, but he wasn't a part of New Edition, New Kids on the Block. He wanted to he was a b-boy like me. So it's just something that you can't make that switch. You know what I mean? Either you're a b-boy or you're a boy band type of guy. And it's not in between because even though I tried to do the New Edition steps and stuff, I'm still trying to break out in my b-boy stuff. So I was like, this ain't working for me, and I couldn't tell the guys in the audition that I didn't want to be in that band.
Right.
But I told Maurice, I have to, fall back.
Right. Right. It's kind of like a fine balance between the sweet and the street. And going back to New Edition, I felt that was where Bobby really hit because he had that hip hop b
Yeah,
boy
both. Yeah,
attitude
both.
and an R&B style. Because Don't Be
Right.
Cruel was R&B and hip hop. Because he could have easily been a rapper if he said, "Nah, I'm just not gonna sing. I'm just gonna rap."
Right. there were two twins that danced with Bobby, Billy and Bobby, the Wonder Twins. I actually set them up to work with Bobby because his other dancers, something happened between them, and he contacted me and told me that he wanted me to be one of the dancers. I was like, well, I'm in Michael Mike and Funky Buzz. I can't just lead the group, Bobby. I wish I did, but because I think that we would have still been going, but because me and Bobby were best friends growing up. Bobby spent the night over my house. I spent the night over his house. I knew his whole family, and we would do parties in the projects, block parties. It was just crazy. But Bobby was just amazing. Bobby would come to my house. I'd teach him how to break dance and everything. Bobby knew how to break dance and all that.
Right. Yeah, he was definitely a dancer, and to see the group's impact together and solo, with Ralph, Bobby, Johnny, and BBD, and how they pretty much set the standard for, okay, this is how you succeed as a group. This is how you break apart, have success, come back, have more success, and here they are 40 plus years later, getting ready to go out on their brand new tour, the Legacy Tour, is with them, Guy, Keith Sweat, and Tank.
Man, I would love to perform on that show. Man, you just excited me just now. So if any of the guys hear this, I would love to perform with you guys, man. That'd be incredible. Because, like, this is a special, special time for music, especially for those brothers, man, to have this type of longevity. My hat goes off to them,
Yeah, definitely that, because when I saw the New Edition story and seeing how they managed to keep that circle so tight to where you didn't know about half the stuff that was going on until the movie was a showcase to the professionalism and how they never let the outside stuff get in the way of business. That when the public sees you, it's all smiles, it's all sing and dance, but behind the scenes, we got stuff going on that you'll never know about.
Right. I credit that all to Brooke Payne, because Brooke Payne was such a perfect gentleman. He was always about his business. He was always sharp, and he was like a no nonsense type of guy. He didn't play in rehearsals. He was very serious about what he was doing, and he made sure everybody stayed on a professional level. And we were all looking up to them in that aspect. My group was like that too, but I loved how organized Brooke was.
Yeah, I had a chance to interview Brooke, and I got the same vibe. No nonsense. Look, the party's over. For real, for real. And when you see the video and Ed and Wood Harris portraying Brooke, rehearsing New Edition as kids, you knew by the time that they got up on stage, they worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. So doing the show was easy. And I'm sure it took Johnny a little bit longer when he first came into the group, because New Edition was a well-oiled machine, and coming from a solo background where you didn't really have to dance and really work the stage, it was like a steep learning curve because New Edition was already established at that point.
Oh yeah. And they were so polished. Like when we were kids, we were like 6 and 7 years old. We were performing at the hi-hat. Me and Bobby would always be like talking crap to each other, like, we're gonna win, right? He's like, no, I ain't winning today. I'm like, all right, man, about to get that L. We always be joking around, but everybody was so serious about what they were doing. We were kids, but we were very focused on being as perfect as possible and performing at the highest level to entertain people. Excuse me, I'm outside, the wind's blowing, knocking things over.
Yeah, but it's almost kind of like, you're looking to see who's the best. And I want to go against the best, where some would avoid the smoke. You wanted the smoke, climb up the chimney, put it in a pipe. We want
Oh yeah. We were always uplifting each other, and we were challenging each other, just to make sure that we were performing at our best. I would teach people how to dance just so that the competition would be on a higher level. Because I wanted everybody, like, people would come and they see us, they'd be like, oh man, they're in it. Like, I wanted to make it fair. So my group didn't like the fact that I was working with every group, but I wanted to change the scale and make it more competitive,
Right. So it was almost kind of sort of like they almost wanted you to be an exclusive gun for them and not share the wealth with everybody else, right?
Yes. But at the time, Boston was exploding with talent, and I wanted to see everybody perform at their best and at their fullest capacity. So I worked with everybody to try to help elevate that.
Right. And I want to get your thoughts on Troop when Troop first came out, because Troop stated that they were heavily influenced by New Edition. They were considered the West Coast version of New Edition, hailing from Pasadena. And then if you look at the If It Isn't Love performances when they did it live on Soul Train, then I believe at the Miss World pageant, I want to say 87 or 88, they were doing like the Troop dance as a part of the choreography. And to me, that was kind of like a wink and a nod to Troop, like, hey, we see you.
Oh yeah, Troop was very influential, you know, and their sound was amazing. Like I always thought that Troop had one of the most incredible sounds of any group. You know, when they harmonized, they were just on point. Their songs were incredible. I love Troop, and I got to work with them in a couple of shows. And we were in Philly, Detroit. We got to work with Troop, and they were just really nice guys. They were very humble and very funny. They were funny, man. We were playing football, catch. I mean, we just had a blast, you know.
Yeah, RIP Reggie Warren. I always felt that there were distinct different dancing styles between both groups. New Edition was more of the school of the Temptations, Shy
Yeah,
Light, Stylistics, Blue Magic, because that's what Brooke
right,
came up under. But in Troop, pretty much was taking what was going on dance wise out in California and had that tight polished element to it.
yeah, right, right. I love their songs. Their songs were just wow. I would listen to the whole album from one song to the last song, first song to the last song. You know?
Right, right. And I didn't know this until a couple years ago that Step by Step was originally done by a group on Motown called the Superiors, I believe in 87 or 88. And then Maurice ended up revamping it for New Kids for the album of the same name. And that just exploded. And that's another thing that Maurice Starr doesn't give enough credit for, is that he's able to hear certain things and be like, okay, this voice is going to go here. This is going to work for this group, because when you listen to Please Don't Go Girl, it's an R&B record. But if you also go and listen to Anquette, I Will Always Be There For You, he kind of took a little bit of that 808 from that record, what was going on in Miami, applied it on to that record. And the same thing with The Right Stuff, the little shuffle. If you listen to Janet Jackson, You Can Be Mine on Control, the little dun 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 dun. I'm sure
Oh yeah,
Maurice was like, okay, let me take this, put it on them. And then Black audience knows this as the dance from Jungle Love by Morris Day and the Time Purple Rain. But when New Kids did it at Apollo, that took it to a wider audience that probably wouldn't even know it.
right. Maurice was a musical genius. He always had that knack to hear what works and what doesn't work. You know,
Mm,
and he was just a genius in the studio. Maurice's ears was just on another level. And right now, I just like to say a prayer. And if everybody could just say a little prayer for Maurice, because he's having health issues right now, and he was in the hospital. So, shout out to Maurice. I hope he gets better and gets back on his feet.
yeah, prayers to the general. And what was your take when you were first brought Good Vibrations and you all were going to the studio to cut it? Was there any hesitance in recording it? Like, man, this is too soft.
I personally told Donnie, why are we doing this song? Because, it's totally different from the hip hop sound that I really was used to. And even performing to make the choreography, it took me a minute to do it because it was different sound. So it made me think differently. So I had to adapt to that sound. So it didn't rub me the right way the first time I heard it. You know? And Donnie kept saying, "This is gonna be y'all big hit." I'm like, "What? Really? You serious?" And he actually knew it was gonna be our big hit. And I hats off to Donnie, because Donnie, uh, he also is a great producer.
Mm-hmm.
I think he produced our first record better than anyone could ever did it. He worked alongside with Leo Kiki, and Mark, was incredible. Because some of the stuff that we were doing, some of the songs we did were remixed too. The Vibrations actually was written by one of the artists in Boston named MC Spice. And MC Spice, he actually wrote a couple of songs for us. And he was amazing. And his songs that we did also got a lot of notoriety, and hats off to him too, because if it wasn't for Spice, we wouldn't have those hit records.
Yeah, that record became huge. And I want to sidebar really quick to a young man who I felt was going to be the next big male R&B superstar, but tragically his life was cut short. The late Chris Bender.
Oh, Chris Bender loved his voice. And it was a shame what happened to him. His friends did him in. Jealousy is a horrible thing, and I just want to say, to anyone listening, don't hold jealousy in your heart, because it'll make you an unhappy person. And I mean, we don't have time in our lives for negative energy like that. It's not going to help you grow. Being jealous hearted, and then hurting somebody like that that's super talented on their way to become super successful, working hard to get it. Nobody deserves to get their life taken away because somebody's jealous of their talent, or their capabilities.
Right.
He was going to be one of the biggest artists. We were all excited about that album. We all heard the album. We were very excited about it, but it's sad what happened.
Yeah, Kiss the Makeup, great record. Who Would I Choose? Definitely a great record. I believe Trick Daddy had ended up sampling that record on one of his first albums that came out, and just how he was along that line of acts that came after the explosion of New Edition, New Kids. Said, hey, if they could do it, I could do it too. So let's talk about Finest Hour, and then Perfect Gentleman. And Maurice Starr's son was in Perfect Gentleman.
Yeah, Finest Hour, I love those guys. Carlos Munoz was one of my good friends, and I got to work with them when they were, I think they were signed to Arista Records, and they were working with Larry Wu. Larry Wu was my manager at the time too. He was my producer, so anything Larry wanted me to do, I would help him do it. So he wanted me to work with all his bands too. So I choreographed a lot of the stuff that Finest Hour were doing, but they kind of had their routines already tight. I just came in and helped polish it up,
Mm-hmm.
And with Perfect Gentleman, I choreographed them from the beginning, because Maurice brought me in when they finished the album and asked me to, work with the boys. And, we were like family already anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Mass Pike Miles was the lead singer at the time. I used to have to go get that boy every day. He'd be in the house playing video games. I'm like, come on, man, we gotta go to rehearsal. The boys are all down there. He lived right down the street from the House of Hits. And everybody's like, yo, can you go get him? So I go. Nobody wanted to go get him because he wasn't listening to nobody. He was just, he was on his own thing, but he knew in order to get better, and I had to give him that Brooke Payne talk, like, yo, the party's over. The video game's over. Time to go to rehearsal. Let's go, And so he'd go to rehearsal and he'd get serious, and all the guys work together. And I was actually working with them when I got the call that my boy Randy got murdered, and it devastated me. I had to go to LA. We was working on their music video. And I had to go out there with that, heavy in my heart. But I love working with Perfect Gentleman. I would, like, shortly after that, the Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch kicked up, and I still was choreographing Perfect Gentleman in the Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. So when we started touring, I would wear the Perfect Gentleman shirt on tour when we performed.
Mm-hmm.
That's an honor, because I felt bad that I had to leave them to go on tour and start, pursuing my own career. But that's the way it is sometimes,
Right. And wasn't Classic Example from Boston as well? The group Classic Example that did It's All Right, I believe, from on the South Central soundtrack?
Oh, yeah. Those are all good friends of mine, too, and I choreographed them, and they were incredible. Their sound, like back in the day, they had a group before Class Example, their name was the Lords, and two of the guys from the Lords joined the other three guys in Class Example, and that's how Class Example formed. With Jamie and Bunny from the Lords, and those were my boys growing up. They did all the talent shows with us too. They were always trying to beat the Funk Effects, and they ended up asking me to teach them dance choreography. And I was working along with them and David Vaughn. David Vaughn was my choreographer. He taught me everything. And I always wanted to do my own thing. Even though he showed me the steps, I made a twist in it because I was very acrobatic and very flexible. And I thought, oh yeah, if I do it like this, it's gonna be better. So that's how I end up creating my own choreography.
Right. Right. And for you, was it weird for you seeing once New Kids hit their pop height, seeing the dolls, the cartoons, all the merchandise, but at the end of the day, like, hey, these are just neighborhood kids, and we're seeing their faces on Saturday morning cartoons and at a JC Penney somewhere on some linen and bed sheets.
You know, what's crazy is that when we would be rehearsing at the Lee School, we would be talking about this stuff. We would say, you guys look like dolls. I bet you they're gonna make dolls out of you guys. I could see all kind of merchandise. And we would talk about this when we were teenagers, you know? And just to see it come to life, it was expected, you know? It was kind of expected, but it was unreal. It's like, this is surreal what's happening, but it really happened, you know?
Right. And I always felt that New Kids and Mark in the same boat as well with the Funky Bunch, that he really wanted to embrace fully hip hop and R&B because that's what they really were at the end of the day. But once the pop success started happening, like, nah, we gotta focus on this pop money. We gotta focus on this pop sound. And when I had a chance to interview Danny was telling me that once the pop success started to hit, it felt kind of weird because we were R&B hip hop and we were just doing that, but on a grander scale.
Right. And Danny actually was a b-boy too. You know, we used to, when I would teach breakdance, like I think I sent you a picture of when me and the twins and Danny and Mark were rehearsing. And Mark was like up to my waist. He wasn't even that tall back then. Danny was about up to my shoulders, you know? And we would, like, all of our breakdance days, we would just practice spinning on our heads, windmilling, footwork, and doing crazy flips. You know, we were very, very adventurous, you know, trying new things. We'd flip off of the wall, we'd just flip off each other. We were doing crazy stuff in the rehearsal that you wouldn't think that we were doing to get better, you know. And I got to give credit to Danny too, because he works really, really hard. You know, he's one of the guys in New Kids on the Block that was the first person to show up, last person to leave. It was always about getting better and improving the overall performance of the band.
Right. So now fast forward to the Funky Bunch. Once Good Vibrations took off, what was that like when the song became a hit and you guys are out on the road touring and then going into the studio for the sophomore follow-up?
You know what's crazy is when we did a radio tour. It was, you know, we were opening up for like all the biggest acts in hip hop. You know, we did shows in San Francisco with everybody. You know, Queen Latifah was there, De La Soul was there. Speaking of De La Soul, God bless. You know, shout out to everybody and all their family members. And what's his name? Heavy D was there. Man, God bless him too, man. You know, there's a lot of great artists that passed away, man. So shout out to everybody in hip hop that lost the great members in hip hop, man. This is the 50th year anniversary of hip hop, and I just want to show respect to everybody that paved the way, all these pioneers that, we knew that we had an uphill battle, but we won. We're still here and we're still moving forward. And look at hip hop. They tried to stop hip hop, but hip hop has been in movies. Hip hop has been in commercials, all these television shows. I mean, hip hop has influenced the whole world, you know? And I think hip hop made the world a better place. I truly do.
Yeah, I agree with that because if you take a look at the Grammys that just happened, where Questlove curated that hip hop medley to see it be at that pinnacle from where it was in '89 when they boycotted because they wouldn't televise it.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know, that's crazy. And I think you know there's just a lot of people that still don't understand hip hop as a culture, but we're still here and moving forward, and I love it. I love how it's bringing groups of different nationalities together. You know,
Right. Right, yeah. So I'm curious to know, was there any secret rising from the guys when Mark decided to do the whole Calvin Klein thing and become an underwear
of
model?
course.
And then we started to see him branch into being a more serious actor. But to see him in the Calvins and then perform at Rock and Jock where he dropped the pants and had the Calvins on, I'm sure like, man, come on, Mark, man.
Well, I'll tell you, right? I don't like to talk about this too much,
Mm,
but me and one of the guys in the band got into a fight in Europe, and that kind of dismantled the group for me. I got hurt in the fight, and I kind of took some time off from the band, and that's when they recorded the second album. And once I started healing, I just didn't feel like I was a part of the band really anymore. Even though I tried to stay as involved as I could, I was started doing my own music, and that's why what led me up to doing my own album today. And even though there was no hard feelings between me and the band, but they were a little heartbroken that I kind of backed out of the band. And later on, me and Mark, we reconnected. We formed another band called One Love, featuring Marky Mark. But the other guys in the Funky Bunch weren't involved in that. They felt some type of way when Mark started doing Calvin Klein and movies. He kind of disassociated himself from the music for a while, you know.
mm.
And then once me and him got back together, we we never stopped working together ever since then. And we did a record. And what messed that up is one of the guys after the record label East West Records gave us money for the tour and would put us on a big tour. We had our own stage. He decides not to sign the contract. So, and during that time, that's when Mark got the what movie was that? Fear. And Fear started blowing up. So Mark got another movie role. So I know he was going to start steamrolling through the movie. So I started working with him exclusively on reading the scripts and learning the game, you know?
Right. And one of the first movies I remember seeing Mark in was Renaissance Man. It was him, Richard T. Jones, Later in the Wood, Kadeem Hardison, Stacey Dash, Khalil Khan from Juice. Very personal movie for me because my uncle was a member of the army. He was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina at the time when they filmed Renaissance Man, and he got to take a picture with some of the cast members and RIP Gregory Hines, who was also in Renaissance Man as well.
Oh yeah, I got much respect for Gregory Hines, and all the legendary dances, man. And he's such an incredible actor too.
Mm-hmm.
And he influenced me majorly. His
Right.
style of dance and his his acting was just so incredible. Also,
Right, right. And I want to touch on this with you. Boston native just lost the legendary Bill Russell, and how he was very influential, not only in terms of sports, but also being out and active in the community. And he openly talked about how when he got drafted by the Celtics, that it wasn't easy for him and how he had to deal with a lot of adversity moving into Boston, especially when he opened up Slaves. I didn't know Slaves was his place, and how he just had to traverse through a lot when he got drafted, and how Red Auerbach didn't care about the assumptions of black players at the time. He said, I'm gonna put the best players out there on the court. Color ain't gonna matter.
Yeah, and thank God, because look at the greatness that he achieved. You know, he was one of the great men, and I love what he did for the inner city kids, like at the boys club. I was one of the kids that went to the boys and girls club, in Roxbury, and as I grew up, Bill Russell was always supporting the basketball leagues there, the youth leagues, and he was always at the games, at the championship games, and a lot of the Celtics too. But I'm really thankful that they showed up, because when you're a kid in the inner city and there's a lot of violence and stuff, and segregation and racism, it's hard to feel like you matter, but these guys on the team, they let us know that we mattered and they cared about us. So
Mm.
we worked hard, because they like, one day you can do the same thing. If I could do it, you could do it, and we felt that it resonated with us.
Right. I'm curious to know too, was Black Bostonians torn during the Lakers Celtics rivalries? Because you got Magic and Showtime, but you gotta support the home team with Bird, McHale, Parrish,
Oh yeah,
and
we were
oh
Celtics all the way. We were Celtics all the way. I loved LA, but Celtic all the way. I'm Boston all the way. The Bruins, Red Sox, Patriots. You know what I'm saying? I'm Boston. You know.
yeah, that's the one thing about Beantown is that you guys are very loyal. You ride for your teams. Great sports team, great sports city. Um, Forget Tom Brady. I'm salty. They still beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl, so I'm glad Tom Brady's gone. So we can finally, hopefully, get something. But Larry Bird, coldest player I've ever seen. I felt cheated because the closest I got to see Prime Larry was when him and Magic went on the Dream Team, and I didn't get to see Larry at his prime. Larry would talk trash to you and say, "I'm gonna do this. You're supposed to do this. Do it too."
Larry's the only person I seen shut Jordan down. Because Jordan couldn't get past Bird. When they was just steamrolling through people, he met Larry and the team, and it was just a different ball game. You
Yeah, I
know.
mean, I mean, he gave that great crow after Jordan dropped 63 in the Garden. I just saw God playing basketball.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That guy, I love that guy. I love him, man. I just recently played that golf at his course. It's amazing.
Nice. Yeah, that's the thing about Larry. Larry was no dummy, and you would hope that you would know that he was no dummy too, because I think Cedric Cornbread Maxwell, who's from Kinston, North Carolina, said
Mm-hmm.
that when he first showed up to camp, he was like, "Man, this kid can't play, can't jump, can't do this." Larry,
Oh yeah, Larry was amazing. He was amazing.
yeah, had
Yeah, he
back
did talk a lot.
problems. Yeah, had back problems, not been an issue. And I think another thing too, I think still haunts Celtics fans to this day. Had Len Bias not died.
Oh yeah, that was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm always, I was a teacher when I was in Boston for a little while at the after school program at the Lee School. I loved the kids there, and I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. And you know, being there, it taught me a lot about you know, how much kids really look up to you and need you. You know,
Hmm.
and so I wanted to make a difference in all those kids' lives. And we got the opportunity to take the kids to Celtics games, and we really help uplift the community with these kids. Like sometimes I bump into them when I go back home. They're like, "Man, I can't believe you loved us so much." I gave them my all. You know.
Right. Right. And I want to talk about really quick the DYC, because I know that was a place that new kids mentioned a lot. And then in one of the earlier performances that they did at Nines Lansdowne Street, Donnie had mentioned a man by the
Oh,
name of Al McClain.
oh yeah, Al McClain is the older brother of the twins that was in my group. And coming up, Al was like always a very inspiring person. He was one of the best basketball players. He hardly missed a shot. Every time we got to see him play, he was such a class act on and off the court. He was always dressed up in nice suits, treated everyone with love and respect. He was just a great all around guy. You
Right.
know.
Right. And what was it like for you to see a basketball court getting named after Michael Bivins, who is a b-ball head, because if you look
Oh
at a
yeah,
lot of New Edition videos, it kept basketball in it because I believe ball was really life for Mike before he got into New Edition.
oh yeah. Me and Mike was on the same basketball team at the Boys and Girls Club when the Celtics was sponsoring the games, you know. And championship game, I showed up late. The coach wouldn't let me play. I had to sit on the bench and watch them win. I was like, oh, I was so heated. But Michael was always a top scorer, man. He was. That's one thing about Mike. He worked hard, no matter what he did, you know. So I knew he was going to make it one way or another, either through basketball or entertainment, you know. And I got mad respect for him, and I was so happy that they named a court or a field after him. You know, I heard about it, and I was like, he deserves that, you know, because he inspired a lot of people. He gave so much of himself to the community. You know, it's good to see the community give back to him.
Right. And to see where everybody in New Edition branched off to outside of group ventures, and then new kids as well, you know, with John doing the farmhouse fixing and get farmhouse fixer on HGTV, Donnie and acting, you got Wahlburgers, and you got Danny and Jordan in their respective venture, Joe out on Broadway, and of course Mark with the acting. But at the end of the day, what I get a sense from everybody in those groups, like, don't let Hollywood fool you. We're still those guys at the end of the day, and we'll let you know if you cross us wrong that we still from here, and you can
Oh
get it.
yeah, oh yeah, that's real. The Boston is just like that because it's a tough place. You know, sometimes you have to, you know, you have to pull out the Roxbury guy, you know,
Mm,
because people, you know, they won't give you a break sometime until you show them that side of you, and then they'll be like, okay,
right.
I'm gonna fall back. You know?
Yeah, yeah, it almost kind of feels like New York in a way as well, where they'll let you know that you're getting too big for your britches, but also very loyal. If you show up, do
Oh
the
yeah,
work, and don't cheat us because we're paying our hard-earned money to come see you.
oh yeah, and I believe that, you know, deep down, Boston was a place where people, you know, going through so much uh, segregation, racism. It wasn't like the richest town. There were a lot of, you know, pimps on the corners where we grew up. There's a lot of gangsters. So it wasn't that easy to stay focused on what you want to do because, like I said, the streets was always on the corners waiting for you, trying to influence you and trying to make you turn away from your goals. You know, so I think that we gave a lot of relief to people that were going through those times too. They seen us working hard, they seen us actually making a difference, and it helped them have a good day when they came to our shows. You know, it kind of gave them a break from the reality, the harsh realities that were existing in it.
Yeah, and to think about how, you know, New Edition started off as kids, new kids started off when they were young, and how both groups, you know, got it out the mud. It wasn't a cattle call like making a band. It was homegrown, brought up from the soil, rooted, and how, you know, the lives of the members wasn't easy.
Oh yeah, it was constant challenges, you know, and you know, like when I was coming up, you know, I had to face a lot of um, people passing in my life. Like my mom passed when I was 10. I was doing those super kid shows. I had to perform with a smile on my face with my heart breaking. I still had to do it. And I'm very thankful I had the support of all my boys, you know, like the guys in the funk effects, they're very, very supportive. And they didn't let me get too depressed. They kept me my spirits up. And that's one thing I love about Boston too. They see you down, they pull you up, you know.
Mhm. Right. And I want to get what was your thoughts on seeing the Battle of Boston performance at the AMAs with New Edition and New Kids, and how, for me as a fan of both groups, it felt like a full circle moment. And I'm sure it probably felt like a full circle moment for New Kids that we get to perform with the guys that started it for us.
Yeah, you know, the new kids on the block was so influenced by new kids. I mean, new edition, and they loved the new edition, and to perform with them, I knew that they couldn't wait for that moment. So it was good for Boston too to see that, because we were always saying, oh, we want to see this happen. And to see it actually happen was really, really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get that New Edition New Kids tour next. That's what I want. So let's talk about current projects, what you got going on right now.
Well, right now I'm about to I have a song out right now called I Am Hip Hop from my album, a 16-track album called The Throne of Grace. And I think The Throne of Grace is a perfect title for me because God has been good to me, you know, and I'm not a young kid anymore, but my heart still has a strong passion for hip hop as it did. It's even stronger now, and I'm more experienced now. And some of the songs I'm doing is touching on a lot of things that are current in the world today. And like I Am Hip Hop showing that I really am hip hop and I just love hip hop. But then I have songs about brotherly love. I have songs about, you know, the history of hip hop, you know, and how we need to stay together and support hip hop, and how people need to just give each other, you know, more love. You know, I'm trying to get people to elevate love. That's what I really want in the world. So
Yeah.
that's what my really about.
All right. And where can people find this project?
Well, right now, I have a site called my official. I have a site. It's my official merch site. I have a lot of clothing on there, hip hop clothing, but also I have my music on there as well. So you can find my music content on bigacetees.com. And you can find all the cool merch that I have.
All right, people, if you want to get hooked up with some fresh gear, because you know warm weather's about to hit, and also sample that music, go to bigacetees.com. That's bigacetees.com. Big Ace, do you have any shout outs you want to give before we wrap, my brother?
I'd like to shout out to you, Jarrell. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. And I just want to shout out to all the pioneers of hip hop. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. And so I thank you guys for being the brave soldiers and never quit. You know, we never stop, we never quit. You know, we are the real hip.
Yeah, can't stop, won't stop like Diddy. And you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and on YouTube at youtube.com/Beyond the Album Cover. We have man of many trades, former member of the Funky Bunch, Mr. Big Ace. Big Ace, thank you for coming on to Beyond the Album Cover.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
God
sir.
bless.
Appreciate you.